Right then, the Australian Open and Novak Djokovic saga now seems to be snowballing into a major controversy. So let's give you all the lowdown and all the things that we know about that controversy so far. Let me give you a background before that. In November, the Australian Open authorities made it amply clear that no one who's not been vaccinated would be allowed to come over to Australia and participate in the Australian Open. And at that very moment, there was a lot of murmur around as to what would happen with participation of Novak Djokovic, who up until now has refused to take the vaccination. Just go back into Novak Djokovic and his approach toward vaccination, and you'd realize that he's been one of those anti-vaccine crusaders. It all starts in around April of 2020 when he had a Facebook chat with a lot of fellow tennis players, and he was quite open about how he's not going to be taking the vaccination once it comes. Now that became a major controversy at the time in 2020, and there was a quickly drafted press release by his team then to cover all the damage he had done by mentioning something like that, because the backlash that was there at the time, people said that if a star like Novak Djokovic says something like that, that is only going to encourage vaccine hesitancy. So his PR team came into overdrive and drafted a press release saying that these are his initial comments. However, he's not opposed to vaccination. He's going to look at the science, try and understand it, and once fully convinced, he will take the vaccination. However, his action said something completely different. A few months down the line from that controversy, he organized an RDR tour, which was a tennis tournament that he had organized in Serbia and Croatia, and during which time a lot of players participated. That tournament was also criticized because it allowed spectators to be there in the stadium, and this is, remember, at the peak of the coronavirus in 2020. Not only that, after the tournament was done, he had a massive party where a lot of players had come, his friends had come, there was no social distancing, and guess what happened after that? A lot of players, including Novak Djokovic, tested positive for coronavirus. So he's had this casual attitude towards the virus, which has been well documented in the media. Now, what happens during the Australian Open? Now, after that controversy in 2020, Novak Djokovic got down to business, things that he does best on the tennis court, winning 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams in 2021. Then there were doubts as to what would happen at the Australian Open, because back in November, as I mentioned, the authorities of the Australian Open had announced everyone needed to be vaccinated, and it was a well-known fact that Novak Djokovic had still not been vaccinated. Now, Novak Djokovic waited on that. People were waiting on what was to happen. And then suddenly comes a social media post by Novak Djokovic where he announces that he's traveling to Australia. He has been given vaccine exemption. As soon as he put that post out, that post went viral, and there was a lot of backlash in Australia itself. Remember, Australia itself have very tough protocols for everyone, and a lot of guidelines for everyone to follow when 90% adults have been doubly vaccinated already, because there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy. So the government took some hard steps there to ensure that most people are vaccinated. And then comes this, where a star like Novak Djokovic has been exempted from vaccination and is allowed to play on the Australian Open. So the Australian public, there was a lot of backlash there, a lot of pieces written in the media. If you remember, there was an article in India as well, a young kid who was supposed to play in the juniors at Australian Open. He was denied entry because he had just received 1 dose, and his father wrote a letter explaining that, for people below 18, the vaccination is just opened and various things, but the authorities were adamant. So there were a lot of discrepancies this way. So that backlash came. Rod Laver, the legendary Australian tennis player, he said at the time when Novak Djokovic put that social media post out that this is going to get ugly, and that's exactly what happened. But now the latest development is that he wasn't allowed to enter Australia, and that he was stopped at the visa counter, and a lot of questions were asked of him. Post which, now the latest news is that he's been asked to leave Australian soil within 24 hours. So now his Australian Open participation is very much in doubt, almost negligible is something that we can say. However, that's not the end of the matter. His legal team have said that they're going to file a legal case, and we haven't heard the last of this. We'll keep tracking all these updates, so do subscribe to Sports Today for all the latest updates on this Novak Djokovic versus Australian Open controversy.